Good morning, students. Well, as I said in the introductory video for this week, welcome to week 5. And the stadium behind me, as I mentioned, is Safeco Field. It's the baseball stadium for the Seattle Mariners. My wife and all of her family are from Washington State. All 3 of her children were born in Washington State. We lived for a while in Puget Sound, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places in the world. Several of you students live up in the Pacific Northwest, and you know what I'm talking about. I do follow baseball somewhat. I follow the New York Giants and the Seattle Mariners. One's American League, the other one's National League, if you know what that means. And so my family loves to go to Seattle, and we even like to sit up high in the stadium behind me so that we can watch Puget Sound and the baseball game intermittently as we choose to. So let's jump right in here to our slides. So let me bring these up and put us in a position to share our slides. Okay, and let's go ahead and bring it all the way. Okay, here we go. Chapter 16, Implementing HR Strategy. This week is about connecting chapter 16 to everything we've learned before. But for your paper this week, for your essay, particularly linking chapter 16 to chapter 2. And so everything that we learned about creating a sustainable competitive advantage. And if you remember our 4 key ingredients, in fact, I'm going to look at my sheet right here in front of me. Organizational outcomes and competitive advantage. High performance work systems can create a sustainable competitive advantage if they focus on 4 criteria. Valuable, number 1. Rare, number 2. Difficult to imitate, number 3. And organized, number 4. Remember that was from chapter 2. And so for your final essay this week, you're going to link those ingredients that we looked at in chapter 2, and you're going to link them to this system that is called a high performance work system. And so that's what this last chapter that you're going to look at is about. And you've got chapters 13 and 16 to read this week. But there was just no contest for me which one I was going to lecture on, because this chapter connects the dots to what you've learned so far. The outcome objectives for this particular chapter are: discuss how a firm's strategy can be achieved with the high performance work system and what its fundamental principles are. Second, describe how a high performance work system is designed. And then explain how its components must be aligned horizontally and vertically to support one another and a firm's strategy. Number 3, recommend processes for implementing and evaluating the high performance system that we choose to engage in. And then 4th and lastly, discuss a high performance work system's potential outcomes for both the employee, the individual meaning, and the organization. So that's why, again, I'm going to say that sporting teams, dance teams, musical teams, anything that you can think of where we want to combine the strengths of the individuals on the team and in an organization, what you're going to learn with a high performance work system is everybody that is part of that volunteer or paid staff is and should be part of the team, rather than it being just, a hierarchical power play where some people matter and everybody else are just, little ants down below us that don't really matter. That system is old, it's archaic, it doesn't work anymore, and I don't think it's ever the approach that the Bible wanted us to use. The introduction: high performance work systems, a specific combination of HR practices, the structures and the processes that maximize the following: knowledge, skills, commitment, flexibility, and resilience. So again, when we think about a sustainable competitive advantage, these are the same. It's not the exact same list that you have in the other, but you get the idea. They're wanting to reinforce it and just use different wording here. Here's a chart version of it. Implementing this high performance work system takes a strategy by the human resources department. And what is human resources again? People. So the linkage, notice here, it's interesting here too. Many of the charts that you've seen, and there are some today, are in a circle form. This one is linear, and it's designed that way on purpose. First of all, you have to have a system that you're going to design it, knowing that you want to have congruity. You want to have a workflow. You want there to be some team effort. On an athletic team, in football, you have an offensive team, you have a defensive team, and then you have special teams. Well, you want workflow between all three of these different teams. And then even on the team, you want there to be a flow between the team effort and the individual effort. And then alignment. We want to make sure that there's a vertical fit and horizontal fit. You, as a course, as 2 cohorts in this class, have done a marvelous job of getting and understanding the importance of fit, and I really appreciate that. That's one of the most important components of understanding having a sustainable competitive advantage is knowing how everybody fits. Do you have the right people in that role to make that a good fit? And then how can we implement all of these different strengths? And now that we've got the right fit, let's go win the game, right? And then we look at the outcomes. We look at our record, if you will, as a winning team, as an orchestra, as a dance team. You would then look at the outcomes after the fact and say, okay, what adjustments do we need to make for the future? Research has found that high performance work systems have certain benefits. And so it's worth looking at. Notice that high performance work systems have a larger influence on performance of organizations than other highly visible governance practices, such as independence of a firm's board of directors, meaning that the old theory of top down, where just 1 or 2 or a handful of executives pass down all the decisions without walking through the company and getting ideas and giving voice to people that play different roles within the organization is an old way of doing things. It's not efficient and it's not very profitable. Because of their synergistic effects, I should say, the elements of a high performance work system have a larger impact when they're implemented in a bundle. High performance work systems have a significant effect, regardless of whether or not you're measuring operations or the finances. High performance work systems can be successfully implemented. This is a really cool thing in all types of organizations, no matter what their size, and whether it is a manufacturing organization, whether it's a service organization, and I would say in ministry organizations as well. The underlying principles of a high performance work system. Now, this is slide 7. So as I mentioned earlier, slide 7 and slide 35 are really the essence that I want you to catch in this last lecture. You'll see that over on the far left, egalitarianism and engagement. So remember, employee engagement is important. We want that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation running high. We want a high motor in our volunteers and in our employees. And egalitarianism means that we have more of a flatline design to the governance of the organization rather than a hierarchical. Remember when we went through the book of Acts in chapter 6 and we looked at how the elders got together and made the decision. It wasn't one person, and it wasn't even just the apostles. They got other people involved in the process, and therefore more folks had ownership of what they were trying to accomplish. And then once we have designed it that way, then we want to share the information and develop trust. Again, in Act 6, you saw that. Then the knowledge development, what we then decide we're going to do after the fact, and then let's see if things change. in Act 6, the best way for them to find out would be whether or not the Greek widows were being taken care of at a higher quality level than they were before. And that would have been one way they could check their high performance work system. Egalitarianism and engagement. Here's a breakdown of what we just looked at. More egalitarian work environments is a lessened status and power differences within the organization. As I mentioned before, it's the kind of things, like I said, that we've done here at New Hope, where we've just gotten away from everybody having individual offices and, you know, don't knock on my door if it's closed, that kind of thing. You just working more in collaboration of a team, it increases teamwork, and it just naturally causes people to want to have more ownership of what we're doing because we're doing it together. Moving power downward in organizations is empowering employees and frequently requires structural changes on how decisions are made. Workflows can be redesigned to give employees more control and influence over decision making. Job enlargement, enrichment, and self-managing work teams are typical methods. They're not the only ones, but these are a good way to get started for increasing the power of employees to influence decisions, suggest changes, and act on them. I'm going to give you a book. It's in your recommended reading list for this course. It's a fun book. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? And it connects the principles that we've looked at in this entire course. And it's a fun book to read. It's not really designed to be like a business reading. It's actually, you're reading a fun story. It's almost like if you could mix an excellent business book with a Disney story, then that's what this book, Who Moved My Cheese, would be about. And it's in your recommended reading list. Egalitarian engagement, the employee engagement. That's the side we're looking at. So let's go back and look at our chart again. Egalitarianism and engagement. So we've broken down egalitarianism, and now we're looking at employee engagement. Employees who are engaged look like this. They're consistently performing at high levels. They're enthusiastic about what they do. And they themselves, on their own, that intrinsic motivation, they're looking for better and more efficient ways to get things done. So it behooves us then as managers and leaders to listen to them. They're the one that's actually doing it. My office administrator, if I'm not listening to her when she makes suggestions to me about more efficient ways to run the office, I'm just a fool. She's the one doing it every day. I want her to come to the staff meeting and tell me things that she needs from me so that she can do a better job. Involving employees, I should say, let's finish down our list here. They're more engaged and they're looking for better ways. Involving employees in decision making and giving them the power to act has a tendency to it. And the tendency is good. It increases employee engagement. This video is really good and it's kind of scary. One of the things I caught on there that really snagged me is that when employees are engaged, when there is egalitarianism operating within how the organization functions, the turnover rate is reduced by 87%. 87% of employees who are in that kind of work environment choose to stay there. That's a big deal. Shared information and trust. When employees are given timely information about business performance, plans, and strategies, they're more likely to make good suggestions for improving. Again, on a sports team, if the third baseman for a baseball team, he has a certain perspective of the field from that third baseline. If the coaches and the other players aren't listening to that third baseman when he's making suggestions about how they formulate their defense, then that's just foolish. And the manager of the team could say, well, I'm the manager, I'm the boss, I make all the decisions. Well, go ahead, but you're probably going to be looking for a job soon because you're not listening to the team around you. Sharing information then shifts organizations away from a command and control, which I just mentioned, toward employee commitment. Employees are likely to feel more committed to new courses of action if they take part in the decision making, and they're happier. Folks, the entire book of Acts is about this. When the Holy Spirit came and descended on them, he mobilized them into one team focused on one mission or one organization. And then inside of that, they all had ownership. And then it developed smaller teams. And they were capitalizing on their individual strengths. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it talks about all of us having different types of strengths, different gifts that the Holy Spirit gives each one of us on purpose, so that we can take our strengths together and have an egalitarian trust of information and have a competitive advantage against the kingdom of hell, who's trying to keep people from knowing Christ. You can't tell I get excited about this stuff, can you? It also shifts the relationship between the employers and the employees from one that is merely transactional. If you continue on in learning about organizational leadership and strategic leadership, you're going to be taught a difference between transactional leadership and transformational leadership. Transactional leadership and interaction means you come to work for 8 hours today and I pay you for 8 hours of work. That's a transaction. Transformation begins to happen when together we collaborate and together we do something that really makes a difference for someone else. And we both get the joy of knowing that we got to participate in it. High performance work systems depends on the shift from touch, remember that in chapter 1, to knowledge work. Today's employees need a broad range of technical problem solving and interpersonal skills. Today's employees need to learn continuously. It's not, hey, I got taught how to, turn that machine on 25 years ago and, that's all I need to know. It's not like that anymore. And also real-time, just-in-time training, on-the-job training. And this is just being stated by the authors as a fact. When people are better informed, they do better work. It's kind of a duh, right? Performance reward linkage. When companies reward their employees based on their performance, workers naturally pursue outcomes that are mutually beneficial. Again, think about teams. Sports teams, music teams, dance teams, and other types of teams that would operate together and accomplish something. Cheerleading teams, same kind of thing. When this happens, employees are more likely to go out of their way above and beyond the call of duty. Why? Because they own it. Their name is attached to it now. They care about it. And I saw that in that same video that I mentioned earlier, that 70% of the US workforce is disengaged. It's a big deal. That's not okay. That's no es bueno, right? Performance-based rewards ensure that employees share in the gains. So this creates more ownership. The workflow design and teamwork, high-performance work systems frequently begin with the way that the work is designed. Well, when we were looking at creating jobs, right, the first thing we had to do was look at designing the job. Then we wrote the job description. Then we start interviewing so that we can hire the right person that will be the right fit for that job. Well, this is the same approach. If we're going to design a system for high performance, then we need to begin with the way that the work is designed. And firms are focusing on the key business processes that drive value, and then they create teams that are responsible. Again, this is what the Holy Spirit did beginning in the book of Acts. And then these are the things you've been learning already through this entire course. Homegrown processes. I really like this. The more homegrown your system is, the more likely that it won't be imitated by someone else. Now, they're not suggesting that you just go off and make something up on your own that you have no idea if it's going to work. But what they are saying is that the more you can put uniquenesses to the way your organization goes about it. Look at Disney. When Disney first started thinking up his organization, one of the things that he did that was homegrown was that everything that was going to be done there was going to be done with excellence and with incredible detail. So that's why when the park was first opened, Disneyland, all of the tiny details was what drew families to want to come there. It didn't just feel like they were going to a carnival. It didn't just feel like they were going to the county fair. The amount of detail was so much better, and it was homegrown. He did it in a unique way. Several studies suggest that both the performance of employees and their satisfaction is much higher if the workflow is designed that encourages skill development and employee involvement. If people feel like you're investing in them, they're more likely to invest in you. An old adage that I remember from John Maxwell years ago, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. In Philippians chapter 2, Jesus came and dwelt among us, became one of us, showed us that he cared, and then we started to show interest in his kingdom and in his organization, if you will. This is, I want to work for Google, right? Watch this video and you're going to put your application in Google. This is everything we've been looking at, but this is looking at it in a chart form if you're really visually designed in the way you learn. So here's the strategy, and you've got the key components. The company's values, remember, mission, vision, and core values. The employees' concerns and the competitive challenges. And this is where the vertical fit comes in. So you've got the work design, the HR practices, the leadership, meaning, you know, us being invested and engaged and involved in it. And then what technologies will help everyone do their job better. Ensuring horizontal fit. Well, horizontal fit is reinforcing each other. It's washing each other's feet, if you will. When Jesus got ready to leave earth, one of the last things that he did was tell his disciples, I want you to reinforce each other. I don't want you to be in this company just for yourself. And the synergy that was achieved through that was really at the heart of it. Jesus says, if you want to be great in my kingdom, be a servant. That's another form of leadership you'll learn if you continue your education in strategic leadership, is the power of being a servant leader. Vertical fit means that we are making sure that the systems we put in place, again, come back and look at the organization's goals and strategies that are designed from the mission, vision, and values. And they're designed to link employee initiatives to those above mentioned strategies. Necessary actions, well, this is what we need to do. Okay, now we're in love with it. Okay, now we're convinced, let's go tackle this thing. Now what do we do? Well, these are the steps, and I'll let you look at those. Then this is the same thing. This is the written out version, linear version, and this is the chart version of it. So we've got 4 steps to this. We've got to build a case for change. We've got to engage the stakeholders. We've got to communicate it and then evaluate it. I would say this not only is so impactful to organizations that are for profit, but those of you that are in ministry, this chart right here can be so helpful to you and myself as we lead in ministry environments. Because if we're going to bring change, one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made as a pastor is just making the decision in a vacuum that we're going to change something. And I didn't build a case for change. So I just decided it. And then when you decide it on your own, you have to own it on your own. Now, after the fact, you're trying to convince everybody that this decision that you made that they already hate now, you've got to go back and convince them why it's a good idea. Whereas maybe it would be better to look at it, pray about it, and start building a case for the change. Just maybe like you would build a legal case. Why would anyone even listen to this idea? especially the more major the change, the more you want to build a case for it. Then you go engage the stakeholders. You go talk to your church council. You go find the key investors. You find the grandmas that have been prayer warriors in that church for 55 years, and you go engage them. And then you start engaging the people that are overseeing your different departments. Again, if it's a church, get your children's ministry leader, your worship leader, your teen leader, your church council, long-term elders, your prayer warriors. Get them engaged, and once they're engaged, then everybody has ownership of it. Now you want to communicate it to everyone else and be thorough about it. And then once you begin to perform it, and once you begin to enact it, to implement it, then you've got to come back and evaluate it. Building a business case for change and engaging the stakeholders. So this begins to talk to you how to do just that. And your textbook has a great chart that shows a bridge and pillars, which is right here. I'm not going to go through it, but again, those of you in ministry, this is a really valuable asset. I wish I had been shown this and talked to about how to build a case for change with stakeholders in the church way back when I went to Bible college in my 20s. It would have saved me so much headache, and it would have been so much more effective. Establishing a communications plan, building support, and implementing it to be more ready to accomplish the goals. And as we talked about earlier, top-down communication is not enough anymore. Two-way communication must be implemented. Two-way communication not only can result in better decisions, but it may help diminish the fears and the concerns. Again, if I would in the past have built a case for change, I might have been able to stop a lot of the, say, negative gossip or negative talk that would go on where people didn't understand what was going on. They didn't feel communicated clearly. And so they just, human nature to make negative assumptions when they don't know. Evaluating and sustaining a successful system. Well, here's the process. You can create a process audit, and these are the metrics that you can look at, all good stuff. And finally, the high performance work system should be periodically reevaluated, right? Don't just put it in place and then walk away and leave it. When change occurs, it should be in alignment with the strategy, not just because we got bored. The outcomes for high performance work systems and effective HR management can be categorized in the following way. You have the concerns of the employees, and you have the concerns of the organization. We want to stay competitive in the challenges and changes that we make, but we also want to make sure that our employees have quality of work-life issues that are being addressed. Those of you in ministry, you put this in your posts, and some of you in your essay writings, that your concern is for burnout. Well, if these things don't get talked about, they don't get better, right? And so that goes back again to the egalitarianism, to hope for and ask for an environment where we can discuss these things so that everybody benefits in the long run. The best organizations find ways to achieve a balance between these two. Employee outcomes and quality of work life. Everything, again, we've been talking about. Let's just look at that sentence right in the middle. As a result, they are more likely to be satisfied on the job and find their career growth needs are being met. When that happens, there is higher level of intrinsic motivation. Organizational outcomes, several organizational outcomes can result. You're seeing these here. Again, this follows to our next slide, and this is slide 35. High competitive work systems can create a sustainable competitive advantage if they focus on 4 things. So out of all the things that you feel like you've been studying and learning, and PK, I've got so much information, so much data, how do I narrow it down so that I can apply some very strong foundational principles? Well, here they are. We want to focus on 4 criteria if we want to have outcomes that give us an increased competitive advantage that is sustainable. valuable, rare, difficult to imitate, and organized. If it's valuable, it's going to provide something unique to the customers that not everyone provides. And it is established by creating an environment where people can make mistakes, where innovation is encouraged rather than knocked down. Where, if you're a leader, one of the worst things we can do is if somebody makes a suggestion, the first thing we do is knock it down. Let them bring it out. You may have run into that problem 50 times, and you know that might not work, but they don't know that. Listen to them. And you know what? You might learn something this time. Secondly, it's rare. Rare means that we develop and harness those individual skills for our baseball team, our football team, our band, our dance team. And we're looking to harness what we're good at, our strengths and our opportunities that are not equally available in all organizations. And then, if we're doing that, we design the team around our capabilities that aren't easily transported or duplicated or copied. Because the people, if you're hiring the right folks and you're building a team approach where egalitarianism and engagement are high, it's going to be really hard for another organization to be quite as good as you are. Because you guys are just so engaged. Have you ever walked into a restaurant where you can just tell, man, they're all over it. They're taking care of everything. Then you walk into the next restaurant and you feel like you're offending them that you walked in the door. They just don't want to do anything. And then lastly, it has to be organized. Combine the talents, find out what everyone's strengths are, create opportunities from them, and then deploy them with flexibility. Well, I left this one in here because this little video here I think is helpful as well. Students, I have very much enjoyed being in this course with you for the 5 weeks. This is our last one. Again, if you need me, you have my phone number, my email, and my text contacts. Have a great week.